Count me in.
3, 2, 1.
Take a deep breath, that's right.
As early as 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, Nathan is summoned by Knighton. Apparently, it seems that some heavily guarded cargo was ambushed outside a facility in Odessa, where 20 security guards were mercilessly annihilated. Nathan's job is to retrieve what went missing and to find out who the seller and buyer are. Oh yeah, and also what the cargo is. The cargo in question isn't just important, it's priceless. So much so that analysts in intelligence report the cargo has gained traction and become extremely popular with the wrong sort of people. And with a price tag of over $10 billion, they can't afford to stay clueless. The cargo has now been codenamed the Handle. When Knighton learns that Nathan plans to recruit Orson Fortune to lead the team, he isn't pleased. Knighton considers Orson an administrative disaster, and for good reason. For example, he can't fly unless it's a private jet because of claustrophobia. Then he needs sedating with the finest claret because of agoraphobia. And there's the rehabilitation in the Maldives because of cloudophobia. Truth be told, Orson really does seem like a lot. Nathan agrees Orson is high maintenance, but he also reminds Knighton that Orson is trained to exploit every system, think 3 steps ahead, and improvise better than anyone in the business, which makes him the perfect man Knighton needs. The mission scope and stakes demand no less. Knighton relents, asking where Orson is. Turns out he's in Morocco, on yet another rehabilitation retreat. Nathan goes to meet Orson, who is predictably not pleased to have his vacation interrupted. He doesn't care how serious the issue is and insists he isn't working while on holiday.
I'm on holiday, and I'm not interested in working at the moment.
Nevertheless, Nathan calmly outlines the assignment and the stakes before walking out to wait for him in the plane. The commsman would not be John this time because he has been transferred to Mike's team, another agent who's in competition with Nathan. Orson finally gets to the plane and asks about the team involved. He isn't happy that John is no longer on board since he likes and trusts him. When he learns a new member, Sara Fidel, will be his footman, he initially assumes it's a man, only to be disappointed to find Sara is a woman, having expected someone tougher. Nathan tells Knighton about Sara, surprising him since she was on Mike's team. Then there's J.J. Davies, a sharp, tactical field agent who's also being considered. Together, the duo is introduced to Orson. He's unimpressed, particularly with Sara, whose upbeat personality clashes with his gruff, no-nonsense style. 3 hours later at the airport, Orson is already getting impatient with the bagman's delay, and Sara's childish attitude isn't helping. Finally, she spots the bagman with the drive, and Nathan reminds Orson that the bagman is just a helpless professor. They just need to know who he's delivering it to. Everyone gets into position, and just as Jane, another team member, moves to follow the man, she gets tasered. Since Jane isn't responding, Sara calls for Marcia, but unfortunately, she has also been tasered. Orson immediately senses something is off, and Sara quickly notices a glitch in the CCTV. Orson realizes that John is responsible for this, and asks Nathan what Team B is doing there. Nathan confirms this with Knighton, who admits the government likes keeping departments in competition. Lo and behold, Mike and his team are truly there, and Orson instantly figures out that they want to pick up the bagman. Sara manages to resolve the glitch, and Orson instructs JJ to go in another direction. Seeing 2 men from Team B approach Orson, Sara warns him just in time. In a blink, Orson turns the taser on both of them, or more specifically, on their groins. Just as the bagman steps out, 2 other members from Team B ambush him, trying to lead him to their car, but Orson steps in. He quickly takes down the men in a swift fight, while Jay handles the other 2 by the car. Nathan brings the van around and Orson steers the bagman into it, while JJ takes the wheel. Now really scared, the man keeps chanting and holding his chest, but Orson doesn't understand what he's saying. He thinks the man is saying he's hot, and Nathan tells him to loosen the man's tie, realizing he's likely having a heart attack. The man is almost pink now, and Sara tells them he has a heart condition. JJ notices 2 cars in hot pursuit, and Sara tells them to connect her to the hard drive so she can clone it remotely. They get roadblocked by a big van from Team B, prompting Orson to tell JJ to lock the doors. Now in a frenzy, the bagman tells Orson that they have his wife hostage and have threatened to eliminate her if he doesn't deliver the package. Since they don't know his face, he instructs Orson to go to the Duchess, table 12, 6 p.m., to save his wife. Mike and his team begin sawing into the van to get the door open. Just as Sara finishes cloning the drive, Mike opens the door. By this time, the bagman has already succumbed to his condition and passes away from the heart attack. Nathan hands over the drive, and Mike wonders what happened to the bagman. Well, that's a simple answer. Mike literally scared him to an early grave. After Mike and his team leave, Sara tells them the drive is good but scrambled. Without the data key, it's basically useless. So, their best option is to deliver the drive and find out who the buyer is. In order to do that, they head over to the Duchess, and after 40 minutes of Nathan sitting alone, two men finally approach him. Sara instructs him not to say anything since he has a bad accent. From his glasses, she captures their faces and pulls up information on one of them. Orson quickly recognizes the name Ben Harris, the lawyer/consigliere to Greg Simmonds, a billionaire arms dealer who sells weapons to terrorists. He's impossible to catch and only uses Ben Harris on his biggest deals, never turning up in person. Fortunately, Greg Simmonds will be hosting a lavish billionaire party, and this might be a great opportunity to exploit in order to find out who the buyer and seller of the handle are. But the real question is, how do they intend to get an invitation to the party? While on the jet, Nathan wakes up surprised after hearing the flight course has been changed from the south of France to Los Angeles. Confused about why this happened, Sara explains that they're heading to LA to pick up their invitation, which is actually a person named
Danny Francesco.
He is a very popular movie superstar and happens to be Greg Simmonds' favorite actor. Greg wants what he can't have, and there's nothing he can't buy except Danny Francesco, who recently snubbed his $10 million offer to jump out of a cake and sing him happy birthday. Greg sure does aim high. After running a background check on Greg Simmonds, Orson reveals Greg is obsessed with celebrities, and even more with their partners. So they plot for Sara to attend Greg's lavish party as Danny Francesco's girlfriend. Nathan wonders how they can get Danny since he's notorious for saying no, but the answer is simple: blackmail. In a bid to pull this through, they blackmail a movie producer, Saul Goldstein, to help them lure Danny to Las Vegas under the premise of a 5-picture deal. Looking for what to tie Danny to, Sara digs out some explicit videos showing his affair with his sister-in-law. Finally, something to get Danny in a fix. Meanwhile, Danny and Saul are on a flight, and just as they're about to take off, Saul persuades him to pick up a Swedish accent for the upcoming role he wants to give him, which makes Danny burst into uncontrollable laughter, since he is American. Orson walks into the jet and introduces himself as Danny's new manager, but this gets Danny thinking the whole thing is a joke as he bursts into laughter. To Danny's surprise, Saul leaves the plane, putting him in a dilemma as he does not understand what is about to unfold. He begins getting angry, yelling for his crew, but Orson tells him to consider the whole thing a movie set and just sit for 2 minutes. He tells Danny that they are both going to a party, making Danny wonder just who on earth he is to tell him anything. Orson introduces himself again as his manager using the name Charlie Rosewood, and states that Danny is no longer going to Las Vegas, but rather to Cannes. Naturally, Danny disagrees and tries calling out for someone to kick Orson off, but no one responds. Putting the blackmail into play, Orson tells Danny about the evidence he has from his affair with his sister-in-law. Now, this actually gets Danny in a fix. Left with no choice, he agrees to the plan, and they arrive in Cannes. Just before the operation, Danny gets nervous and decides to opt out of the mission due to the consequences and the bad people that will definitely be flocking to the event. But Sara and Orson manage to convince him that he is the best option for the job. More like they both feed his artistic ego, pumping him full of praise and making him regain his confidence. He wonders what Orson and Sara will be doing while he's playing his part, and Sara fills him in, sharing that they need to get close enough to Greg in order to remotely access his cell. They all arrive at the party, which is being hosted on a ship by Greg. Nathan, who's watching through a telescope, reminds Orson that they aren't there to buy anything, especially after he spent the entire annual budget on wine during the flight over. At this point, it's either Orson is really high maintenance or the annual budget is too small. Seems like it's the first option, though. Their mission is to lay off the wine and concentrate on getting into Greg's phone to identify who is actually buying the handle. Before the three climb aboard, Orson and Sara encourage Danny again, giving him the much-needed confidence. Greg spots Danny from a distance and becomes instantly starstruck. Due to Orson's spending habit, he offers to buy a neck piece from the auction for Danny, which frustrates Nathan to no bounds. Luckily for Nathan, Greg buys it himself and gifts it to Danny. They exchange pleasantries as Danny introduces Sara as his girlfriend, Michaela, and Orson introduces himself as Danny's business manager, Charlie Rosewood. Greg feels Orson doesn't look like a manager, but Danny assures him that he's doubled his account in the time he's been with him. Still chatting away, Greg receives a call, and without hesitation, gives his assistant, Emilia, his phone to answer. Greg, excited about Danny's presence, and even more so by his supposed girlfriend, suggests they all retire to the cocktail master for some drinks. Unfortunately, Emilia taking the phone away seems to be interrupting Sara and Orson's plan, as they need Greg's phone to be within close range to carry out the operation. While at the cocktail master, Orson tells Sara to go find Emilia and hack into the cell phone they need. So much for ladies first. Sara heads to the office where Greg's assistant is holding his phone. While trying to hack into it, she bumps into Ben Harris. To cover up, she tells Ben that she was just admiring a painting, claiming to be an art enthusiast in order to keep him talking while JJ uncovers the data from Greg's phone. Orson had earlier spotted one of Mike's men, Vincent, at the party, the same guy he saw at the airport trying to get hold of the bagman. He heads over to control the situation just as Sara and JJ uncover the data from Greg's phone. Sara manages to keep Ben talking just as JJ finishes the extraction. To tidy up the situation, Orson follows Vincent into a closet and offers him a choice. It's either he takes his wristwatch and keeps his face intact, or leaves the boat with a broken nose. Mike, knowing who Orson is, tries to warn Vincent over the comms that Orson would try to bribe him, but unfortunately, before he can get through, JJ has already intercepted and cut the signal. Vincent doesn't go for the wristwatch and intact face option and demands more from Orson. This simply tells Orson he's chosen violence, and he beats him to a pulp. Little wonder what was wrong with just taking the wristwatch. While the party is going on, some of Greg's friends, who are big fans of Danny, approach him for pictures. This creates time for Greg to approach Sara, who's still acting as Danny's supposed girlfriend, due to his obsession with celebrity partners. Greg stares deeply at Sara, telling her about his intentions and how he wishes to show her how big the world is. The operation is successful, and they all exit the cruise ship. After gaining access to Greg's phone and hearing a conversation between him and Alexander, they find out Alexander is the dealer for the handle, but the buyer remains a mystery. Meanwhile, Sara runs some background checks on the biotech billionaires Trent and Arnold, whom they met at Greg's party, and finds out they are buying a large amount of gold. She figures that if they can physically hack into their computers, they might be able to get the buyer's info. Orson decides to take it on solo, breaking in and installing software for Sara to hack in via USB thumb drive. After successfully planting the software, he gets intercepted by 2 guards just as he's leaving the building, but he smoothly covers his tracks. After gaining access, Sara finds out the reason for Greg's planned visit to Turkey over the weekend. She gets a location ping from Kasim's phone, and they all head to Turkey following the lead. However, Greg had earlier invited Sara and Danny to his villa in Turkey for a getaway, aiming to lure Danny's supposed girlfriend. Sara and Danny Francesco both arrive at Greg's villa in Turkey as he flaunts some of his exotic cars, including one of Danny's dream cars. Danny gets overwhelmed seeing it in Greg's garage, and without hesitation, Greg tells him he can have it. As Danny and Greg go on a car ride, Sara quietly moves around the villa in search of Greg's computer room. She is intercepted briefly by Amelia, but eventually gains access. On another note, Orson and JJ spot Kasim on the streets of Turkey, while Sara breaks the firewall and hacks into the computer at Greg's villa. She finds out that Greg is buying tons of containers filled with stolen AK-47s. This gets Nathan puzzled, and he wonders why Greg would be doing this. Thinking it might be a dead end, Sara digs deeper. Nathan believes they're following the wrong lead and asks Orson to come back in. But Orson spots Ben Harris and soon realizes the deal isn't just about guns. JJ locks in on Orson as he follows Ben to his location. However, Ben recognizes Orson and runs. JJ and Orson engage in a hot pursuit as Ben tries to escape. Sara extracts a file from Greg's computer. It's the data key that unlocks the backer drive, confirming it is the handle. The handle is the first of its kind programmable AI capable of hacking any system in the world, launching a nuclear strike, and covering its tracks without being detected. Although its intended use is still unclear, it's now certain Alexander is selling it, with Greg acting as broker for the $10 billion deal. Based on a newspaper article and information from Ben Harris's phone, the deal is set for 9 a.m., with Ben to be picked up from the hotel by Alexander's representative and taken to the exchange for the deal. Seeing that they still need Ben Harris to find out who the buyer is, Orson volunteers to act as Ben Harris in order to meet with the buyer. Since Ben Harris has passed away from a fall off a skyscraper after trying to play a fast one on Orson, the buyer does not know Ben Harris's face. But hold on, there is a bit of an issue. Orson has to speak with Greg as the deal goes on and would need to sound exactly like Ben Harris to avoid getting caught. This is not an issue for Sara, as she uses AI on the vocoder to change Orson's voice to sound like Ben Harris when he is speaking with Greg. Orson meets with Alexander's representative while JJ closely escorts the vehicle without being noticed. Orson calls Greg on the phone while meeting with Alexander's representatives to let him know the handle is intact and they are ready for the transaction. Greg, however, does not notice it is Orson speaking, and not Ben Harris because of the vocoder Sara has used to intercept the call. Greg tells Orson the 15-digit passcode, which completes the transaction just as Amelia and Greg's security team spot a hack in their system. In a bid to find out where the signal is coming from, Amelia sends out a thorough search on the villa. Orson's cover gets blown during the transaction, and the Ukrainians attempt to shoot him, But JJ steps in just in time and covers for Orson with a sniper from a long distance. A helicopter fires sporadically from the sky as Orson makes a run from the scene in an SUV. Confused about who is running the helicopter operation, Orson tells JJ to scan for the identity of the people in the helicopter. JJ uncovers that it is Mike and his team. Meanwhile, Sara and Danny try to escape the villa after their cover gets blown. Orson gets upset as he finds out Mike and his team are there to interrupt and spoil the event. Mike tells Orson to surrender as he demands the handle. Orson hands over the handle to Mike, thinking they both work for the same person. But shortly after, Orson finds out Mike is not working for the same agency and has gone rogue, as he executes the Ukrainians and whisks away with the handle. Just as he is about to leave, Mike commands his team to execute Orson, but JJ steps in once again with a sniper from a distance, eliminating the entire team ordered to end Orson. Orson gets on a nearby chopper with JJ and heads off to get Mike and his other team. Sara and Danny find themselves in a car chase by Greg's security, and Danny shows some amazing driving skills as he holds them off long enough for Orson and JJ to intercept. Orson spots the car chase and quickly heads to the end of the tunnel with the chopper as he awaits Danny and Sara. Immediately, Orson sees Danny and Sara come out of the tunnel. He sends some high-impact missiles to Greg's team chasing them, just as they are also about to exit the tunnel. Danny and Sara join Orson and JJ on the chopper as they inform Nathan that Mike has gone rogue. Orson decides to turn back the chopper and head to Greg's villa, as they now have enough evidence against him to negotiate an exchange for the identity of the buyer and the location of the operation. They all arrive at Greg's villa once again, and Orson offers Greg the choice of keeping his commission in exchange for the identity of the buyer. Greg soon reveals the buyers, who turns out to be Trent and Arnold, the biotech billionaire friends of Greg. Greg further reveals that they intend on using the AI, the handle, in conjunction with several satellites to shut down the world's banking system. This explains why they've been buying up $40 billion worth of gold and covering their tracks. In other words, by the time they succeed, gold would be the only usable currency in the world. Orson asks Greg to take them to Trent and Arnold. Greg informs them of the heavy private security Trent and Arnold have rented, but this does not bother Orson. He's confident he can handle it. Greg takes them to the location where Trent and Arnold intend on launching the AI, and they camp a few buildings away. Sara sends in a drone to get proper coverage of the area for Orson, as he prepares to take down all the guards hired by Trent and Arnold. As expected, JJ and Orson easily take out the guards one by one. JJ snipes from a building rooftop, covering Orson as he goes in 1 versus 1 without raising alarms. Meanwhile, Greg and Danny head into the building where they meet Mike, Trent, and Arnold. Greg talks about his payment for the job and demonstrates why he should not be messed with. He blows up all the satellites Trent and Arnold had planned to use for the operation right before their eyes. Things get really frightening for Trent and Arnold as Greg tells Danny to hand them a paper. Contained in the paper is a list of everyone dear to Trent and Arnold and the exact location and time they would be executed if they do not pay Greg his money within 5 minutes. This causes panic for Trent and Arnold as they become terrified by Greg's threat. They order the transaction to be made immediately, but Mike tries to calm them down, telling them Greg is bluffing. This, however, does not reassure Arnold and Trent, who are already shaken. Shortly after, one of Mike's hackers informs him they have gained access to Trent and Arnold's accounts and now control all their money and assets. They no longer need Trent and Arnold. Upon learning this, Mike orders his men to execute Trent and Arnold. This leads to a shootout between Trent and Arnold's security team and Mike's team. The aftermath leaves casualties with almost no survivors. Orson arrives at the building intending to retrieve the AI, the handle. On getting there, he is intercepted by Mike, who tells him to drop the case and walk away. But Mike is no match for Orson, who swiftly subdues him with a series of jabs to the face. JJ and Sara meet up with Orson outside the building and inform him that Nathan has abandoned them since he has something more important to do. He sent the BB jet and is now in Doha. He's also placed all of Orson's medicinal needs on board, but Orson decides they're going on holiday. At Doha, the trio meets up with Nathan, who tells them he has another job since the last one was a success. This time, the money is spectacular. Orson doesn't care how much because it's not worth trading his holiday. He drops the case for Nathan and turns to leave with Sara and JJ in tow. Nathan agrees but tells them to be back in 36 hours. However, that doesn't apply to Orson, who nonchalantly states the holiday is for 2 weeks. Nathan compromises with 48 hours, but Orson yells out 10 days. Nathan, frustrated, yells out 96 hours, but Orson says a week, and Nathan finally agrees. Nathan also requests the necklaces and watches Orson stole from the Ukrainians since their government wants them back, but Orson has already sold them and invested the money. Oh, well, they are now in the movie business. If you've made it to the end, hit the like button, comment, and share. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next recap.